Hey, what is happening, people? Woodsy Workout here, and today I am talking you through how to run a Hyrox in your own gym and what to do if you're a little short on equipment. So in my last video, I talked about when it's good to do a Hyrox specific work and why it might be useful. The main reasons for those are you want to get a feel for the entire race, in which case the details don't matter so much as long as you're doing a similar workload and a similar time frame. But the other reason to run a simulation is to time trial yourself, and that's when the sort of nitty-gritty details do matter. Again, I've said it before, you're never going to get it exactly the same as the Hyrox race, but if you can make it repeatable and you can measure it, then you can measure your race-ready fitness. And that's what we're going to dig into today. So the first thing to consider is how are you going to do the runs? The run makes up more than 50% of the race, so it is important what you choose here. Your main options when training are you got running outside, running on a treadmill, or running on a self-propelled treadmill like an assault runner. And there are pros and cons to each. So when running outside, especially if you can find a surface like a road or a pavement, that is going to be your best option to replicate the same surface as the Hyrox race. They are run normally in convention centers where you're basically running on flat, hard concrete. So the impact that has on your feet and lower legs, it is noticeable. So I find it does kind of change the feeling going into movements like burpees. The other pro to running outside is you have to dictate the pace yourself. You can't rely on a treadmill speed or a monitor to give you like instant feedback. You can only really use your watch, which you are allowed to do in Hyrox. So it's a good way to you get closer to race conditions and help you learn pacing. The downside to running outside is it's not always guaranteed the same conditions. Weather can play a role, the surface that you're running on, and like how easy it is to get in and out of your gym. The other thing would be like the number of turns and undulation of the ground. Ideally, you'd like to run like 1 or 2 flat loops and then be back to your training spot, but how often is that the case? So the other pro to having, it's a pro and a con, having running on a hard surface, because it can be a con in the damage that you take. So if I was to do a race simulation on, for example, like an assault runner, the recovery would be a lot quicker than it would if I do a race simulation running outside. So I would recommend that running outside if you want to simulate the feel of a full Hyrox and the impact that it'll have on your body. But because it's less standardized, not always using it as a time trial. So the second option you've got is the assault runner. And it's another good option. The pros to the assault runner is it's easy to standardize because it's inside, and you can run at whatever speed you want quite quickly. You can be flexible with your pace, and if you've used one of these before, you know that running on it, like changing speed, becomes quite natural. And you can kind of do it as easy as normal running. It becomes a subconscious decision. As you feel good, you speed up. As you tire, you slow down. The monitor can be useful in seeing what speed you're doing in real time, and especially when you come out of a station, how long it takes for you to get back up to speed can vary. So a lot of the time, because the compromised running feels so hard, you feel like you're pushing at a good speed, but you could be slower than you think. So I think it helps to eliminate some of that drop off, but the downside is you're not going to have that monitor in your race. You can keep checking your watch, but you're limited. The other con is the machine requires a slightly different running pattern. It favors more ground contact time than normal running, and actually studies have found that it uses a wider variety of muscles than traditional treadmill running, and I believe it's because it's more hamstring dominant because you're dragging the belt underneath you. So there's some minor things there. For this reason, I would use it for time trialing a Hyrox simulation, as it's repeatable and it's effective. But I would make sure that you are also doing running outside or on different surfaces during your other workouts. Then finally, we've got your standard treadmill. I think this is most common in gyms, so accessibility is a good thing. It requires the same running pattern form as flat ground, although the belt does aid you by propelling your foot back, which tends to make it easier. And it seems, the universal way of countering this is by putting your incline on 0.5 or 1%. It's not a perfect fix, but I think it makes the effort seem more similar. Same as the assault runner, you've got a monitor that can be helpful in measuring and checking your speed, but don't become dependent on it. The big difference with between a standard treadmill and the assault runner is your running is at a fixed pace. So depending on the treadmill and the settings you choose, you might be able to keep it running during your workouts and hop straight back onto it at a fast pace, or you might have to start it from a dead stop and ramp it up. Now, if you want to be competitive in your race, then you never really want to be standing still. You want to be running the rock zone and getting back to your race pace as quickly as possible. So the pros and cons of keeping it rolling at a fixed speed is it forces you to hold your target pace, and it can push you harder and faster than you would naturally, but because you can't slide off your pace by accident. And if you do change speed, it's like a conscious decision. So I would say the treadmill, it can be used to run a time trial simulation, but you should have some practice with what speed you're going to run at and how you're going to configure the settings of it. What it is good for is if you do know your paces, pushing yourself. So setting your speed to just above your average pace or the pace you did last time, and in a particular workout that can boost you and force you to run a bit faster and see if you can hold on. So that's an example of how you can use it to your advantage. So that's the running. And now on to the stations. So firstly, you've got the ski erg, and obviously your best bet is using a Concept 2 ski erg because that's what they have in the event. If you don't have a ski erg, you can do similar movements like band pulls or med ball slams, and I would use those for training purposes. But if you are running a simulation, the rower is going to be close to the same time frame. So that's what I would choose if you're running a sim without a skier. The sled push and pull, you want to make sure that you are getting enough weight on the sled to mimic the feel of competition. Depending on your turf, the weight can feel much different. So always lean towards the heavier side if in doubt. And I did do a separate video on mimicking the sleds if you don't have one, so you can check that out. I'll link that in the description. The row, again, same as the ski, Concept 2. Failing that, a different cardio machine for the same time domain. The burpees and the farmer carries, everyone should have access to. The one thing to note on these are, depending on the length of space you've got, can make a difference to your speed, particularly on the farmers. You have, if you have a short space and you're constantly slowing down, you can't hold a faster pace. So like, for example, I've got a 12.5 meter straight in coactive gym, which means I have to make like 16 turns to complete the full distance, and it makes it around a minute longer than what I do on race day, where you often only have to make sort of 3 or 4 turns. Lunges are pretty straightforward. If you don't have a sandbag, use dumbbells and try to actually rest them on your shoulders with your arms up. That will simulate the best position. And finally, you've got the wall balls. If your gym doesn't have access to wall balls, then a med ball or a plate thruster can be used as an alternative, but I would bump up the weight because you're not throwing it, so you need to mimic a bit more of a powerful drive. Other considerations when running a simulation in the gym is, of course, transition time. So the more you can cut this down, the better. But I understand there are limitations, faffing around with weights and setup. So, but knowing that even pausing for things like writing your workout down, like writing your time down, that can bring your heart rate down, which it's not going to happen on race day. So if you're really looking to run the rock zone, your heart rate's going to stay high. Also on that, remember that the run and the rock zone total 8.7 kilometers. So if you want to get really specific, I would advise adding like 100 meters to each of your runs. So I'm sure there's more things, but I'm going to leave it there and allow you guys to add some follow-up questions in the comments. If you are more interested in running a Hyrox simulation, we are hosting a Hyrox simulation day on Saturday the 25th of February at our Hyrox affiliate gym, Coactive Health in Chalfont St Giles. We have all the equipment you need to run a full simulation, and if you are interested, send me a message on Instagram at Woodsy Workout, and we also offer courses and classes as well as online training programs. You can check them all out at coactiveperformance.com. And lastly, please hit that subscribe button to stay up to date. I've got some big plans coming for the channel, so it's well worth staying up to date with those. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one.